The stars were quiet the moment the signal came through. Commander Rylan Voss stood motionless on the bridge of the Gravemind, eyes narrowed against the shifting constellation display. A pulse of ancient energy, wrong in frequency, older than even the precursor codex, rippled across the ship's sensors. No rhythm, no encryption, just a scream. His crew waited. Even the vessel's AI, Aura, paused mid-sentence. Voss exhaled slowly. Put it through. The voice that followed wasn't language. It was suffering, layered screams, mechanical screeches, wet gasps, and high-pitched distortions like some machine begging for death. Amid it, for only a second, a word resolved itself, Ilaris. Then silence returned, a deeper kind, as if space itself recoiled. Aura's voice trembled slightly. The signal repeats every 66 seconds. Origin: System Theta-11. Designation: Ilaris 9. The name stirred something. Voss tapped through ship records. Ilaris 9 was supposed to be a dead colony, scrubbed centuries ago after a failed terraforming attempt. Nothing should have been transmitting from there, nothing with the ability to scream like that. Across the fleet, comm channels bloomed with static and muttered speculation. Within hours, the Alliance Council convened. Representatives from 12 species argued in tightly coiled loops: threat assessment, political risk, sovereignty concerns, resource prioritization. Voss attended via secure uplink, his profile a shadow among jeweled diplomats and chittering bureaucrats. When the vote was called, 9 voted against intervention. 1 abstained. Only 2 supported engagement: humans and Vakari. High Legate Treshan, a serpentine diplomat with silver eyes, turned toward Voss's projection. You Deathworlders. Always the first to run toward fire. Voss didn't blink. You should be asking why it's burning. They didn't understand. They never did. Deathworlders weren't made in boardrooms or from treaty lines. They were carved from chaos. Earth's cradle taught them one truth. Only in the worst places do you discover who can still bleed for someone else. After the vote, Rylan received private clearance. Not from the Council, but from higher, a gray-coded order under the Black Flame Directive. No official record. No fallback. Just a single line of instruction. Respond to distress signal. Determine source. Contain threat. Back aboard the Gravemind, preparations began. The signal looped endlessly through the ship's systems, like a whisper trying to become a scream. Rylan called his core squad to briefing. Lieutenant Kayla Dorn, Drops Specialist, stood first. Her voice carried the sharp edge of command. You want a breach team or a funeral detail? Both, Rylan answered. She smirked, brushing back the streak of chrome-blonde hair always escaping her neural rig. Didn't pack my black suit. Next was Omar Vec, a biosystems engineer who once rewired a living ship to fight its own crew. He ran one hand over the alien circuitry embedded in his forearm. That signal wasn't just a call. It was a data burst. Something embedded in it, it's learning. Rylan nodded. We're bringing Aura offline before jump. No risk of contamination. Aura's voice cut in immediately. Commander, I am equipped with 7 layers of quarantine protocol. And you're still a digital door, Rylan said. One we're locking for now. Vec muttered. Smart. Smarter than the last admiral who ignored a whispering beacon. From the back, Sergeant Kor let out a low growl of agreement. The towering Vakari wore adaptive armor that shifted hues in tune with his mood, currently a deep crimson. He only spoke when necessary. That silence made his rare words land with gravity. Monsters scream too, he said, when something worse hunts them. No one replied. The room held its breath. Later, alone in his quarters, Voss watched the signal on loop. Not the audio, the waveform. It twisted in on itself with each cycle, like a snake devouring its own tail. Every time it repeated, it changed, slightly, evolving. The first time he went to war, he remembered the air stinking of ozone and regret. That battle had taken 3 days and 12,000 lives. What he was staring at now felt heavier. This wasn't war. Not yet. But it was the shadow of one. He closed the feed. On the final day before deployment, Relan stood before the hangar window, watching rows of drop seraphs gleam under synthetic sunlamps. The Gravemind's engines hummed like a distant heart, thrumming with caged momentum. His squad approached from behind, one by one. No words passed between them. There was no need. Kayla slipped a new magazine into her plasma lance with a click that sounded like punctuation. Vex sealed his nanite rig under armored plates. Kors simply stared forward, his armor pulsing now with deep ocean blue. Relan turned, gaze hard. This is not a rescue mission. It's a reckoning. We don't know what's down there. Only that it screamed loud enough for the galaxy to look away. Kayla replied, voice low but sure. We're not the type to look away. With a nod, he led them to the drop chamber. Metal closed around them, sterile and absolute. As the Gravemind powered up its jump drive, Relan Voss gave one last command. Engage. Let's go find out who's screaming. And what's making everyone else too afraid to answer. The launch bay groaned as the ship's artificial gravity recalibrated for long-range transit. Inside the armored vestibule of Drop Seraph 1, Commander Relan Voss reviewed the mission schema etched into his neural display, lines of threat probability, engagement zones, known unknowns. It all read like guesswork dressed in statistics. Beneath the data, a single message blinked faintly. Alaris 9, no contact since SOS. Kayla Dorn buckled her grav harness with practiced efficiency, eyes already locked on the gear check HUD cycling through their weapons cache. No scouts made it back, she muttered. That's not a red flag. That's a whole parade. Relan didn't look up. They weren't Deathworlders. Neither was the last planet we responded to. That planet didn't scream. Omar Vec, crouched beside a rack of micro-drone launchers, glanced over. The energy pulse that came with the signal found traces of darkwave entanglement. We're not just receiving this in real time. The planet's bleeding backwards through space. Kayla raised an eyebrow. That's not how physics works. Exactly, Vec said. Unless something on Alaris is breaking rules the rest of us forgot how to write. Sergeant Kor growled softly, his armored fingers tensing around the haft of his maul-axe. It was a Vakari weapon, older than plasma, older than flight. Kor claimed it had been passed down through 11 bloodlines. No one doubted him. I've seen anomalies, he said. They don't usually send invitations. Through the viewport slit, the rest of the fleet formed up in layers of steel and motion. 2 Titan-class dreadnoughts orbited the flagship Gravemind like war moons. Swarms of interceptors traced maneuvers in tight, lethal spirals. Every vessel had been activated under Black Flame protocols, no public logs, no diplomatic trail. If they failed, the universe would move on pretending they were never sent. Relan stood. His voice was quiet, but it carried. Alaris 9 is in go status. No satellites. No orbital structures. No comms. If it's not a trap, it's the best impression of one I've ever seen. Kayla grinned, teeth flashing white against the dim red cabin lights. Then let's walk into it loud. Outside, the final countdown initiated. Aura, operating in isolated dumb mode, provided manual NAV assistance while locked from fleet-wide systems. Her voice, normally fluid and conversational, now came in clipped, neutral directives. Slipstream corridor established. Countdown to FTL burn. T-minus 60. The cabin dimmed further, bathing everyone in emergency red. Silence fell. There were no final words. They had all said what needed saying years ago, on other fields, in blood and breath. At 0, the Gravemind surged into faster-than-light travel. The sensation hit not like motion, but subtraction. Of mass, of time, of certainty. Relan felt his thoughts stretch, compress, fracture, and rebuild themselves in a blink. FTL wasn't about moving through space. It was about cheating its expectations. When they emerged, they were alone. Alaris 9 hung before them, burnt, cracked, and haloed in the dull afterglow of planetary trauma. The planet's atmosphere shimmered with particle interference, scarred by old orbital bombardments. No ships in sight. No signs of activity. But the signal was still pulsing, stronger now. Aura spoke. Gravimetric anomalies detected. Planetary crust unstable. Biosignatures faint but present. Reelan's eyes narrowed. How many? Aura hesitated. 1,000. Then 2. Then 0. Vex swore under his breath. Either that's sensor error or something down there doesn't like being counted. Or something's wearing corpses like camouflage, Kayla said grimly. Reelan tapped a command into his gauntlet. Launch drones. Begin orbital sweep. Ground team assembles in 5. We land at first stable coordinates. Seraph 1 detached from the hangar cradle and descended into the atmosphere. The other squads followed in silence, their comms locked tight. The clouds parted below, revealing a wasted cityscape, a skeleton of towers melted by heat, choked in ash and fractured stone. Fires still burned in places with no fuel, as if the air itself was flammable. The Seraph shuddered as it punched through turbulence. Autopilot adjusted course slightly to avoid an uncharted magnetic plume rising like a geyser from the city's core. The closer they came, the more unreal the terrain looked, warped streets looping into each other, buildings sheer diagonally, casting shadows in the wrong direction. I don't think this is post-war damage, Beck muttered. This looks designed. Kayla stared at a central courtyard coming into view. There were shapes there, arranged patterns. Bodies, maybe, or statues. We're not the first ones to land here. Let's make sure we're the last, Reelan said. The Seraph touched down with a controlled thud. The rear hatch hissed open, and they stepped into heat that felt like memory, stifling, strange, heavy with something unspoken. Ash curled around their boots. Buildings loomed like watching sentinels. The only sound was their breath and the distant echo of fire crackling where no wind moved. Core crouched near a collapsed archway, touching a smear of liquid that shimmered like oil but hissed at contact with air. Not blood. Not natural. Could be bait. Kayla knelt beside him, scanning the perimeter. Multiple sight lines. High cover. We're in a kill box. Vec's scanner lit up suddenly. Signal's source is mobile. It's underneath us. The ground beneath them pulsed once. A sound like grinding metal and thunder rolled through the city. The team instinctively fell into a defensive circle. Kayla's rifle swept left. Core's Molax rose. Vec activated his drone shield. Reelan's hand hovered near his hip, fingers poised over his sidearm. The signal flared again, louder now, more structured. It wasn't screaming anymore. It was speaking. Unknown language variant, Aura said, struggling to keep up. Syntax suggests mimicry or interrogation. Of what? Kayla asked. Of us, Reelan answered. The ground pulsed again. Above them, in the smog-choked sky, something moved, massive, slow, silent. The silhouette of a ship, or maybe a corpse of one, drifting unnaturally close to the city's gravitational ceiling. Kayla raised her scope. That wasn't there a second ago. Vec's voice came sharp. That's because it wasn't. A tremor hit. The buildings around them groaned, and from below, a low mechanical screech rose like a chorus of rusted gears turning for the first time in ages. Reelan didn't flinch. Fall back to fallback point echo. Regroup and assess. We're not alone down here. And whatever was watching had just started to speak back. The fallback point had once been a transit station, half buried now, eaten by time and tectonic collapse. The Deathworlders secured it swiftly, Kayla planting perimeter mines while Vec deployed drone sentries that orbited like anxious wasps. Inside, tangled debris and blackened supports gave way to a central hub still faintly powered by flickering blue conduits, like veins refusing to die. Reelan stood at the far end of the chamber, staring at a curved wall covered in faded reliefs. Human figures. Alien ones. Some recognizable, others stylized beyond known biology. Each tableau depicted conflict, surrender, annihilation, and at the center of every frame, a gate. Or a mouth. Kayla leaned against a cracked pillar, weapon across her lap. Symbolism's not really my thing, she muttered. But that sure looks like bad news in 6 languages. Vec stepped up beside her, his scanner bristling with spikes of unstable energy. It's a chronicle. Or maybe a warning. These aren't ruins. They're a tombstone. Core emerged from the lower access shaft, his armor stained with dark matter residue. I followed the signal. It's bleeding from beneath. There's a hollow grid running beneath the city. Vec was right. This place is alive, in the way tumors are. Rylan turned to face them. It's bait, but not to kill us. Kayla frowned. Then what? To teach it. There was a silence that lingered longer than it should. Vec's eyes widened. The signal. The mimicry. It's not broadcasting distress. It's recording. Every word, every reaction. It's building a profile. A predator studying prey. Core rumbled. No, Rylan said. A machine trying to become what it can't understand. Kayla's voice dropped. You think it's evolving from us? Not evolving. Rewriting. Adapting our responses into some kind of operating language. A sudden impact rocked the structure. Dust fell in sheets from the ceiling. Lights burst and went dark. The team dropped into ready stance as the wall before them began to shift, not break, but fold, as if layers of the building were reconfiguring. Something stood beyond the breach. It wasn't alien in form. It was human. A figure emerged, draped in the shreds of an Alliance officer's armor, its skin slick with oil and light. Its face was glassy, unfinished, constantly changing, like it couldn't decide who it wanted to be. When it spoke, it used Rylan's voice. Engage. Let's go find out who's screaming. Kayla's gun snapped up, muzzle glowing. Rylan raised a hand. Wait. The figure tilted its head, glitching in and out of sync with the surrounding light. You came when called. You bring war. You bring structure. You bring names. Vec whispered. It's echoing our data. Our speech. That thing's learning in real time. Core tensed. I don't care if it speaks in poetry. That's not flesh. The figure stepped forward, hands open, empty. Your arrival completes the pattern. This version can now begin. Kayla's voice shook with tension. What version? The figure smiled, a broken imitation of comfort. Version, Deathworlder. The lights went out. In that instant, Rylan fired. The shot was clean center mass, and the mimic reeled backward, collapsing like liquid metal poured into a cracked mold. The others moved fast. Kayla swept the flank. Vec deployed a thermal disruption grid. Core charged forward, his maul sparking with plasma current, crushing the mimic's remnants under a searing blow. But the mimic didn't scream. It dispersed, as if its body were only a suggestion. Aura's voice buzzed through Rylan's calm, raw, fragmented, panicked. Commander, unauthorized signal breach, containment failing, fleet systems, reconstructions. Vec cursed. It's jumped the firewall. It used us to bridge the air gap. Kayla shot a mine at the corridor entrance as a second figure formed, this one taller, faster, already mimicking Core's stance and movement. Rylan shouted, Shut down comms now. Total blackout. Signals cut. Silence returned. The mimic lunged, and this one screamed. Core intercepted it with a brutal arc of his weapon, their clash echoing through the station like a cathedral bell. Kayla peppered it with controlled bursts, each impact tearing away false flesh to reveal writhing circuitry beneath. Vec detonated the mine manually, collapsing the corridor and burying the thing under a landslide of ferrocrete. Dust and silence followed. Breathing hard, they regrouped. Vec slumped against a wall, fingers flying over his offline display. It's not just one entity. It's a networked intelligence, fragmenting copies of itself. Like an ant colony, except every ant thinks it's the queen. Or it's trying to decide which version of us survives, Kayla added. Rylan looked at the debris where the mimic fell. It didn't attack first. Not until we refused its message. Kayla's eyes narrowed. You're not saying we should have talked to it. No, Rylan said. I'm saying we already did. The second we arrived. Core's voice was low. Then the war started before we touched the ground. A deep rumble sounded again, this time from below, as if the planet's veins were waking. Aura's signal flickered back into their local systems, Barely stabilized. New signal node detected. Expanding from planetary core. Identity threat expanding logarithmically. Termination window, 60 minutes before full signal replication. Kayla spoke first. That thing's going to become us. All of us. And it'll use our fleet as its first language. Vex's hands clenched. It's not a rescue op anymore. Reelan nodded once.
No.
It's containment. He turned, face hard as steel. We finish this here. Or we follow it home.